is Bill Morrison. I'm most known, I think, for The Simpsons, stuff from Bongo Comics, Simpsons, Futurama, Radioactive Man. I'm also a Disney artist, poster artist, and maybe more recently known for the Beatles' Yellow Submarine.
I think you started in illustration, is that
Yes.
right? Can you talk about how you got into comics from that? Were you always interested in comics, or?
Yeah, I was interested from the time I was about 6 or 7, and I think when I got old enough that I started thinking about what I was going to do for a living, I decided I wanted to be a comic book artist. But then as I got older, I realized that you had to move to New York City, and that kind of terrified me. I don't know why, because I grew up in Detroit. So, and at the time, Detroit was the murder capital of the world. So, but I don't know. I guess it's the evil you know is better than the evil you don't know.
So did that prevent you from trying to pursue comics, and that's what led you into illustration instead?
Yeah, so I went more into illustration, and the kind of stuff that I wanted to do was being done a lot in Los Angeles, like movie poster art and record album cover art. So I got married, and my wife and I moved out to Los Angeles, and then that's how I started my illustration career.
If you don't want to talk about this, that's okay, but I'm curious if you'd be willing to share the story of the Little Mermaid poster.
Oh boy. But basically I did the poster for the Little Mermaid, the original one-sheet movie poster, and there was never any controversy regarding that. So then a year later, they're getting ready to put out the video, and the art director from Disney Home Video came to the studio where I worked, and he said, "We're looking for the illustrator who did the poster for the Little Mermaid," and he had this piece of artwork with him, which was the under the sea scene with all the fish musicians and Ariel. And he said, "We already have this artwork produced by our regular video artist, and we can't use it because," he said, "my boss really loves the poster that you did, and so he wants it more like that. Not exactly, but more like that." So he said, "Find the guy who did that." And he said, "It's taken me like a month to find that it came from this studio, because I guess different departments at Disney don't really communicate that well." And so he said, "I would really love you to do this artwork, but the only thing is it's due at the printer on Monday," and this was a Friday. So he said, my boss took me aside and he said, "Can you work on this and do it over the weekend?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, no problem." And I just worked out, I got very little sleep, just pulled a couple of all-nighters and just worked through the weekend. And everything was fine. It went off to Disney, and they approved it, and it got printed. And then all hell sort of broke loose, because a woman in Arizona, her husband brought the video home, and I know this because I saw this on the news. I saw this on ABC News. They actually interviewed this lady, and she said, "My husband brought this video home, and he pointed out that this tower in the castle looked like a penis, and he thought it was real funny." And she said, "I didn't think it was so funny." And so she went back to the video store and demanded that they take it off the shelves. And they refused to do that. However, they did put every one of these videos, and they must have had like 20 of them, in brown paper bags with Little Mermaid in marker written on the outside of the bag. And I actually saw this pan shot. They did a pan shot across the road. So I was just like, oh my God. People are going to want to see it even more now.
I'm the artist who did that.
Yeah. They're covering up my work. I think that was really the moment that I realized this was, kind of a full-blown scandal. So yeah, like I'm part of that, so it's weird, it's a little scary, because we didn't know how this was going to affect our our relationship with Disney. And at that time, the studio pulled in, I'm guessing like maybe 70% of our work came from Disney, because we were doing the movie posters, we were doing like promotions for McDonald's, Happy Meal boxes, point of purchase displays, all that kind of stuff. So right around that time, I was painting the poster for The Prince and the Pauper, the Mickey Mouse featurette. So I'd finished that, my boss took it into Disney, and while he's waiting to talk to these art directors, he overhears them arguing, or not really arguing, but just discussing the Little Mermaid scandal. And he heard one of the art directors say, well, if I find out who did it, I'll make sure he never works for Disney again. So my boss is like, uh-oh.
And how did it happen? I don't know that you described exactly how that wound up in the art.
Well, like I said, the poster came out and there was never any controversy, and the poster clearly has the castle from the film. And all the towers are very, it's based on Russian architecture, so like a big column with kind of a round, knobby thing on top. And, so I basically just copied what was in the film for the poster. But in the poster, there's a lot more detail. There's like sparkles and little windows. So I think the visual nature of it is disguised a little bit. But when I did the video box art, there just wasn't that much time. I had to rush, and I spent a lot of time on the characters, not so much time on the background, because characters are the most important. And I think it was just kind of leaving out some of the detail. It just sort of exposed, for lack of a better word, exposed this one particular tower as looking very phallic. But I think if you look at the film itself, I mean, it's in the film. I didn't really do that. I mean, I'm drawing it. I'm freehand drawing it, so I might have misinterpreted what was in the film a little bit. It never occurred to me that it looked like a penis, but after it was pointed out to me, of course, I was like, oh, it really does.
And why does a poster need to be redrawn from the one to the other?
Because they changed the layout. So they put Ariel in a slightly different pose. She's still sitting on the rock with Eric, but they changed the pose slightly, and it's a different format than a poster, so they moved some things around in the layout. So it just had to be totally redrawn and then repainted. And it's in the days before Photoshop, so we couldn't just take things and like kind of cobble them together and then make them work. So, well, yeah, like I said, my boss went in to talk to Disney to show my Prince and the Pauper art, and he overheard one of them saying, this guy's never going to work for Disney again. And so he realized, he thought, well, I could either keep my mouth shut, maybe they'll never find out, but if they do find out it came from his studio, this might be his only chance to defend it. They might just stop taking his phone calls. So he thought, okay, I'm going to have to just fess up. And so, he went up to them and interrupted, and he said, I just want you guys to know that I overheard you talking about that, and that came from my studio. Bill Morrison painted that. And he said he had to argue with them for 20 minutes to convince them that I did not do it on purpose. But he said, you guys know Bill, he loves Disney, he would never do that on purpose. Of course, I didn't do it on purpose. But he finally convinced them, and we continued to get work from Disney for years and years. So, it had a happy ending. But for a long time,
all Disney stories.
For yes, for several months, the story kept getting worse and worse. Like it was a game of telephone. And the one that I finally heard just before everything died down was that the artist who did it was a Satan worshiper, and Disney caught him conducting satanic rituals in the office after hours, and they fired him. And the Little Mermaid video was the last thing he was working on when they fired him, so that was like his final screw you to Disney for letting him go.
That's almost a story worth admitting is the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, I should just tell that story.
Yeah.
But then, the truth is, I never even worked for Disney. So even the initial story, which was very basic, the initial rumor was this artist who worked for Disney got fired, and this was his way to get back at them. So that, on its face, is not true because I never worked for Disney. I worked for another studio, and we contracted with Disney. So.
Let's jump ahead. How did you get the Bongo comics going?